is the 30th episode of CloudFocus Weekly for the first week of February 2011. This episode is titled, Who Stole My Honeypot? CloudFocus Weekly is sponsored by Arkus, your cloud computing experts. I'm your host, Jason Allen, and joining me is co-host Justin Edelstein. Welcome to February.
I love February.
It is miserable weather for the last couple weeks.
I love me some February.
It's just closer to March.
Super Bowl.
Good one.
You know.
That's it.
That's it.
All right, well, we got a big agenda that's hopefully will outshine the Super Bowl, which is in just a few days. So we have some news, some cloud news. New York City is hopping on the cloud with some help from IBM. Talk a little bit about that. And then we have basically two categories of news. We have Google News and Salesforce News. We'll talk about those random things.
Well, we'll try and segment them.
Or vague.
So that we talk about Salesforce, then we talk about Google.
And then we'll wrap it up with the CloudFocus app pick of the week.
Sure.
I'm actually going to add a first piece to this that's not on the agenda.
Go for it.
Because it's just
You're so agile.
Well, because it should have been on the agenda, which is the launch of the Daily. That is a big news. So for those who don't know and who've been sleeping in a hole for the last 24 hours.
You know, you should have thrown this on the Google Wave.
Nice. Brought it in there. Good job. So there's been a lot of publishing companies moving to publishing digital content. And this has been happening for a long time. First it was the internet and people were publishing things under sort of, behind walls, like Wall Street Journal, where you had to pay for subscriptions. Then most of everybody went free. Bloggers came in with a lot of their content, which is considered okay, but not consistent. And a few have taken, like Wired, Popular Science, have taken the idea of Sports Illustrated, ESPN, have taken the idea of creating digital magazines, but basically repurposing stuff they already published to print. So News Corp, run by Rupert Murdoch, and Apple have teamed together to create a new type of digital magazine, which is digital only, and not just a repurposing, but a actual writers, photographers, editors.
You mean real professional writers?
Taken from other places, meaning they pulled them from other sources and said, now we're going to write for this thing called The Daily. It's available on the iPad only to start, and it will be a subscription-based news source. It will be original content. It will update every day with new content. They said 100 pieces of new content a day, roughly. It's $39 a year for the subscription, or 99 cents a week. And it will have
2-week free trial
provided by Verizon,
which I actually did yesterday, so that I could play with it.
We both did. So talk about it, because this is this isn't cloud news, but kinda. It's just a different kind of repurposing of news media, and someone's saying we're going to focus directly on this market, all these iPad users, and maybe Android and whatever later. But what your experience? I mean, I know you downloaded. I downloaded it.
I did. I downloaded it. I played with it. Great idea. In future releases of it, I think it'll get even better, because right now it's a little clunky, a little slow. You know, they have some ads that just sort of start playing. It was weird. Like I didn't realize I tapped the screen and all of a sudden there's the Rango movie ad and I can't figure out how to stop it from playing, and it's just playing. The video embedded within it is pretty cool. It works pretty well. I think it was a little light and fluffy. There wasn't much there wasn't like a full page article in a newspaper. Like that didn't necessarily exist. It sort of had a lot of pictures and images and videos, but not a whole lot of reading to do. I liked the sports section where you can pick your favorite teams and then it automatically brings in news. It was kind of cool. Like yesterday I was sitting there on the couch and I was setting it up and I knew the Knicks were playing, so I added the Knicks as my favorite team. As soon as I did, it brought up like the score of the game as it was going on. It was pretty good.
Oh, that's interesting.
So I was pretty impressed with that. And it has the potential to do things like that. Like it brought in Twitter feeds about certain things when you were on articles, so it knew enough to bring things into the fray, which a newspaper can't really do. Right? You're reading a newspaper, it's it's already old, right? It's written the night before, the day before, and in this day and age, everything's sort of just happening in real time. This thing has the ability to keep up with that and bring in feeds and comments, and it allows you to comment on things that you're reading through it to Twitter or Facebook. I think even Tumblr, perhaps. So, in an interesting concept. I hope it gets a little bit more solid from both a functionality, like speed it up a little bit, as well as just the content itself seemed a little light and fluffy to me.
Well, in theory, it was only 1 day's of newspaper, right? It's like you picked up the USA Today and went, well, these aren't really great articles, but if you picked it up tomorrow, you might find better stuff.
Yeah, it just seemed like the stuff in it was a little short. Like there was no in-depth, and we'll see. Maybe the Sunday Daily has, big columns from columnists and more featured article things like that. I wonder if the Sunday Daily will be $2 or
no. You can't break that model. I mean, you can't say it's 99 cents a
Sunday,
week.
99 cents a week, right? So but I mean, I wonder if you could just buy, the Times. You can buy the Sunday Times, right? And it's more expensive because it's 3 times as big and has a bunch more sections. I wonder if they can do that on the fly, like create the Sunday Daily, which has more sections and more.
They certainly
things.
could. I mean, I think the future of this is great. So a couple items. First of all, this is the release of the first time that you can have in-app subscriptions through iTunes. So they actually released this. This is not just an app for iTunes, but it's also a release of Apple's new technology that allows you to have in-app subscriptions. That's a big deal. So I played with it. I looked around. I liked the concept of it. I basically just like that someone's pushing the envelope, and so I will support it, even though News Corp isn't sort of the type of news I am sort of, it's a little bit biased in terms of News Corp stuff.
Didn't what's his face, Richard Branson? Is he the Virgin Records guy?
Yes.
Didn't he come out with a similar type of thing on the iPad? Like, I can't remember what it was called, but it's a magazine, more of a lifestyle magazine, whereas this is more of a newspaper feel to it. I mean, this is the future, and it's coming because the iPad's out. There's going to be new iPads. There's going to be tons of new tablets hitting the market with Android and the WebOS, and paper's not good for the environment. Right?
Couple things. I didn't try it offline. So I woke up this morning, I went to it, I wake up early, I went to it about 6, and I thought, let me get the new version. Didn't come down until around 7:20. So like the new version, the new day, wasn't available until like 7 o'clock in the morning.
That's weird.
And our first thing is fix that, because when people wake up in the morning, the first thing they want is their newspaper. And
the paper is out early. Like the newspaper, you can get earlier than 7:20.
You can get it after midnight, right? I mean, generally they'll drop it. So that was one thing. Yeah, the interface is a little slow. Navigation's a little strange. I like that they have tons of stuff. Like there is opinion. What I'd like is people talk to me. I read the Times. I read the I'd like to have an electronic newspaper that I actually read. That is the thing that I read. Maybe every day or every other day, that I kind of sit back and go, oh, great, this is my newspaper. And I think that's where they have a real good chance, is they can create, it's not just about a bunch of articles, it's about a paper that you like. And that's what Wall Street Journal, New York Times, the New Yorker, the Daily News, the Post, you like your paper, the paper, right? And that's the one you like. Some people are New York Times people, some people are Post people. So I think if they can create sort of personalities and opinion articles and sort of a point of view that we like, it's going to be good. So I'm excited. Just quick question: will you subscribe in 2 weeks? Right now, based on what you've seen.
I've only opened it once. I'm going to judge how many times do I open it in the next 2 weeks, and if I never open it again, no, I won't. But if I decide, I want to read the Daily, and I find myself that, over the course of these free 2 weeks, I opened it 6 times, and I liked it, and I kept opening it, then yeah, maybe I will. Okay. But now I've opened it once. If I never open it again, and it's likely, then no, I won't.
But it's a little bit like the gym, right? If you join the gym, and you're paying $100 a month, or whatever the crazy prices are here in New York City, part of you wakes up every morning and is like, I'm paying for that gym, I better go read it. So my thing is, I want to read more news, right? Because I don't generally don't go to New York. All the New York Times articles and stuff online just stink as far as I'm concerned. So I'm actually looking forward to an offline, take it to the gym, walk, read it on the way to the subway kind of thing. And so I think I will purchase it for the year. It comes out to literally like 10 cents a day. And just think, okay, that's my year subscription. At the end of the year, I can decide, was this of value or not? But it'll at least make me kind of go back to it more and more. Like, and then I'll be mentioning articles to you all the time, and you'll have to go purchase it anyway.
Thank you.
All right, so let's move on from the daily to the cloud.
All right.
Article on, where is this on? TechEye.net. It was actually all over the place. Big press release, kind of. But basically, New York City has said we're going to hire IBM to help us move some of our technical architecture to the cloud. A little vague in terms of what it is.
Yeah, the article was a little vague. 50 data centers will be migrated. Okay.
But
cool.
The underlying statement is, we've seen this out of, I think we saw it out of LA, was moving to Google. We saw it even I think New York City was moving to...
The state.
The state was moving to Google Apps. Again, it's just another... As the government grows and decides that there are huge savings, like saving $100 million over 5 years, it just gets more and more towards cloud computing as a way of saving money, as a way of getting better architecture. I like that New York City is doing it because we live here and if they're saving money, hopefully that lowers our taxes.
And it won't.
And it probably won't.
But the initial project, 14 agencies hopping on, streamlining services such as help desks, hosting, storage, email virtualization, and networks.
And interesting interesting using IBM because I don't really think of IBM as a huge cloud provider.
Yes, but huge bureaucracies would look at, well, who should we use? IBM. Good choice.
So let's replace, I feel like IBM just throws a big cloud up there. It's like, yeah, you can use this. It's cloud.
Here it is.
Whatever.
It's blue.
So then we have two sort of articles, or two genres of articles. One about Salesforce, one about Google. Should we do Google or Salesforce first?
Let's do Salesforce first.
All right.
And then we'll go to Google. So
two things come up with Salesforce. Actually, three. Salesforce, first of all, is bought yet another app.
They're on a buying spree.
These are little tiny purchases. I mean, these are drops in the bucket. Their stock's up very high right now. Stock's about 130 something. So I think they're using some of their capital to go out and purchase some things to sort of shore up their offerings. They have now purchased a Google Apps Marketplace favorite, which is called Minimoon.
A very popular app on the Google App Marketplace to do project management and collaboration. So this will likely fit into their collaboration cloud and shore up, that it's not just it's Chatter, but this is a very tightly integrated with Google Apps, because that's sort of what Minimoon is. It's sort of like a sheet on steroids kind of thing, collaborative environment, and it could be an interesting offering down the road. And from what the article has said about the purchase is that they're going to continue to operate standalone for the time being, but we'll see how that goes.
Right. So if you look up, and the article mentions sort of the list in the last, 6 months or so: Jigsaw, Activa Live Chat, Heroku, eTax, and DimDim. Pretty, a lot of stuff there. So we have data, social data, professional data syncing. We have live chat for the Sales Cloud. Heroku, part of the family, its own chiclet. We've already talked about that. eTax, which I think was the what was it? I think it was a sort of a spin on contact management. I've forgotten about it. And DimDim, which was presentation. Now we have project management. Yeah, they all have these things. We all know, if you're a Salesforce person, as a Salesforce person, if you think this is going to show up in Salesforce next month or spring or summer, forget it. You probably got 12 months before you see the first inkling of it showing up, and then you probably have another 18 months or another 6 months before you see it show up in any real way. But I like it. I like that they're getting into project management. I've seen a lot of project management apps. We actually started with one and then built our own, because project management is different to everybody. It's not the same. What you want to track, how you want to track it, timings, deliverables, milestones, issues, tasks, it's all very different. So it'll be interesting to see how this works and how they offer it. In other news, two other sort of Chatter-related news. One is Chatter.com is open and live and free. And the second to that, which is probably very related, is that Salesforce is going to have a Super Bowl commercial about Chatter, which I actually watched the making of video this morning, the making of the Super Bowl commercial. Have you, well, I know you went and played with Chatter.com. Thoughts?
I tried to, or I did, I shouldn't say tried to, I went in advance doing my research and set up a Chatter.com environment for the two of us on a domain that shall not be named.
Never.
And it was an easy setup. Just typed in the domain. They said, all right, what username and password would you like? And do you want to invite people? And it's a quick, easy form. Sent you an invite, and that's it. You essentially get Chatter free. Chatter tab, profile tab, files tab, groups tab. That's it. You can't go anywhere else. There's nowhere else to go. There's no like setup menu. You hit my settings and it pops up this window and it asks you, what do you want to do for email? What do you want to do for groups? What do you want to do this, that, the other? You can change your picture, add to your profile, etc. It is essentially just the very core features of Chatter with no Salesforce data objects or anything like that. Just Chatter. And it worked. I mean, it is what they say it is. It is just straight up Chatter for free.
Give me some use cases why I would want to use that. I mean, obviously it's hard because we own Salesforce licenses.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to think about, using Chatter without actually using Salesforce. But for those organizations that use things like Yammer, I mean, why not use Chatter as opposed to, I mean, it has Chatter Desktop connected to it. It has Chatter Mobile. It has all those things, but it can do, the files, and it can do groups and private groups, public groups, etc. It's exactly that use case. You can.
So you think companies that are using Yammer? What about like family? I thought like families who all want to collaborate on something.
I mean, they'd have to own their own domain, and everybody within the family would have to have an email account at that domain.
So is that the limitation? I can only have one email account at that domain?
Repeat that.
So I can only have one. I can only have one domain that I sign it up for.
Yeah, it's domain specific.
So unlike the other chat, when you have Salesforce and you have Chatter free on top of it, you can add. They tell you not to add as many as you want, but you can basically add a lot of different domains and invite people from other domains. They say don't put in things like Gmail because that would then open up basically everybody to invite anybody from Gmail. So I wonder if someone went in and immediately put in gmail.com as the first Chatter.com free.
Yeah.
Or if they my guess is they blocked it.
They probably blocked that. I think you can have them being Salesforce go ahead and blacklist certain domains. Now what I'm doing right now is I'm logging in so that I didn't test this theory of being able to, they call it invite coworkers. You in here when you hit the invite button, it says for security only enter email addresses ending in the domain that you set it up in.
In theory, you could do a lot of forwards, right? I could forward that. I could create a domain called blah blah blah.com, and then using any one of these online services, say Justin at blah blah blah.com goes to something at Gmail, Joe at blah blah blah. I can send them off through forwards endlessly, aliases in other words.
Right.
So
in theory,
I could get around it if I want.
It's also, it should be noted, it's on NA9, the pod.
New pod.
NA9, I guess, is for Chatter.com.
So for all you Salesforce geeks out there, that pods are where they put their data centers and they have naming conventions. They've been moving away from it, hopefully with the implementation of my domain, so you don't really have to know what pod you're on. But basically, you're started out with NA1, it's gone up to NA9. I think just years ago we watched them build NA7. So, right, wasn't NA7 the one being built?
I think NA6.
NA6 was the one they were building. So 4 years or 3 years they built 2 more. So pretty cool.
And now they have ones overseas as well.
Yeah. Well, Chatter, so they're going to do Salesforce is going to do a Super Bowl.
Yeah, they're going to do Super Bowl ads. I believe they were created by Will.i.am.
Yes.
They're going to go right before and after the halftime show, which features the Black Eyed Peas. So you're going to have the tie-in there. You're going to have the Will.i.am commercial for Salesforce Chatter, and then you're going to have the Black Eyed Peas, and then you're going to have the commercial afterwards, which I think they're supposed to flow. Meaning, you're going to see, like, the build-up to, here's how we did this, here it is, and then the conclusion. We'll see how it goes.
Will.i.am mention Chatter in his songs?
Soon.
No,
probably.
I mean, literally in the middle of they go, Chatter!
No, I can't imagine that.
So, I think this is strange. I think this is like a tech startup type of thing to do. Monster did it many years ago, or has done it in a couple years. You know, Apple was, I guess, one of the first to sort of put all their money into one big Super Bowl ad. It's odd from a perspective of knowing Salesforce pretty well, and I would consider myself someone who knows that company pretty well. It doesn't seem to fit who they are. It seems like we want to become this big public company. Not public in the sense of selling shares, but public in the sense of everybody needs to know our name like they know Apple's or Dell's or Microsoft's or IBM, or everybody needs to know our name. And Chatter is the way we're going to do that. And Super Bowl is the way to do it. Because again, it's a phenomenal, you know, Super Bowl is the most widely watched television show. It just seems like you're taking a big shotgun shot at a lot of people who are going to go, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I think they're spending $4 to $5 million in one shot.
Double it. 10. Production, build out, scale.
All that. I mean, just to buy the time.
Yeah.
Is like $4 to $5 million, because a 30-second spot for Super Bowls has historically been between $2.5 and $3 million, and then another 15-second spot, you gotta think probably about half of that. So, that's a crazy amount of money to spend for someone like Salesforce.com. I mean, they're really promoting Chatter, but
it's something that's free.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a.
Where are they going with this?
I think if you get your company to use Chatter.com and you get a couple hundred, maybe 1,000 people on it, there's probably an upsell opportunity there for them to be like, hey, wouldn't you like your customer data next to all that collaboration?
And that's an interesting point. I was going to ask you that. I mean, obviously, is anywhere in the Chatter free, can I go in and say, upgrade me to Group, Professional, Enterprise, or anything?
I don't see it anywhere. But
not to say that it doesn't exist.
Not to say it doesn't exist. I'm in it right now, and I don't see it anywhere. It's not on my Chatter page. It's not on my profile page. It's not in my settings. And again, the settings doesn't really bring you anywhere. It just overlays a page for you. So
one thing before we move on, I did see this little opening, and I don't know if this is part of the commercial or not, but it's basically has Will.i.am and some product guy from Salesforce and Mark Benioff talking about how they collaborated using Chatter on this Chatter ad kind of thing. In there somewhere, and maybe it was early in the morning, maybe I was just hallucinating from not enough coffee, there's some sort of character that shows up that's sort of some cloud-based like cartoon character that kind of floats around the Salesforce logo with a big smiling face. It's not chatty, it's not sassy, it's something else. And it immediately looks so cartoonish and so kind of like, really? You're going to have like an animated cartoon character be your Chatter thing? So we'll see. Stay tuned for the Super Bowl, which is this Sunday, and we'll move on.
Yeah, let's move on to Google.
So Google's in the news for two things. Let's talk about the fun thing first, then we'll talk sort of about the more interesting thing second. You can now buy up to 16 terabytes of storage from Google.
Sure. And this coincided with an update to the Google Apps interface. You know, I logged in one day. We use Google Apps here at Arkus, and we write a lot of documents in Google Apps. You know, it's sort of a starting point for our documentation or user stories, or, you know, if we're not writing it in Google Wave, we're writing it on Google Docs, and then it moves to, you know, either a PDF or Word once it's sort of finished, so that we can deliver it to people. And I noticed, hey, there's a new interface. So it added different views and different drop-down actions for files, and, you know, it's a different look. I mean, this is one of the things that Google does that bothers people is that they change stuff and they don't tell you that they're changing it. One day you log in and it's different.
Yeah, they don't give you any preview.
No.
And it's something that Salesforce has figured out very well, is that if you're going to really shoot for the enterprise, you can change stuff on them, but you better tell them you're going to do it.
Better tell them in advance, and perhaps give them the option to not change it.
Right.
Because
Google doesn't believe in that.
No, they're changing it, and they're not telling you, and one day you're going to log in, and you're just going to love the new interface. No training, no nothing. I mean, they have little, here's where this is, here's where that is, video type things, but really, who watches those? And so anyway, that's part of the news. The other news is, as you said, you can buy up to 16 terabytes of storage as part of your Google Apps account. The 16 terabytes will run you $4,000, a little over $4,000. And the storage can be used with Gmail, Picasa web albums for photos, as well as Google Docs, where you can store just about anything, including video files, etc. So
some limitations.
You can start at 20 gigs and go all the way up to 16 terabytes. The limit of 1 gigabyte per file still exists, so you can't throw a HD movie up there if you wanted to. But it's an interesting offering, and they're targeting people who work with video or audio files, like editors that want to back stuff up, or potentially like architects and engineers working with. They mentioned 3D modeling software. I guess there's some big files going on there. So it's an interesting way to back stuff up off-site, potentially challenging people like Mozy and
Carbonite, Backblaze,
whatever else exists out there.
So interesting. It comes out about $341 a month for 16 terabytes. We both own Drobos.
We do.
Which are, let's call them little mini RAID arrays, but smart arrays. But basically, you can throw a bunch of drives in them of any size, and it kind of gives you one big drive. It's self-updating. The nice thing about that is you can put big files. Not mine's, I think, 4.7 terabytes worth of storage capacity, of which I use about 3.9. And I always think, well, how do I back that up online? Because online that would take, A, it would take 17 years, and B, it would cost me millions of dollars. This actually, if it allowed for files bigger than one gigabyte, this actually wouldn't be a bad thing. Again, if your data is important to you, but it is not a drive. It is not a, there are ways to get around that. There are ways to mount Google stuff as a drive. But again, this is sort of where I've been waiting for I haven't gone to any of those other, we use Jungle Disk, but I'd love to have one of these drives that you just have a massive cloud drive. But G Drive is supposed to have been coming for a long time, which would be Google's offering. This is sort of going there, but it's not all the way there. And then the other news from Google, which is very interesting. Actually I was watching a clip from the Colbert Report this morning that was talking about this. I love it when Google Cloud News gets to Colbert, which is about Bing stealing Google search results. Mm-hmm. And the way they did this, so basically Google's come out before and said that they're doing this, right? They're stealing our search results. And Bing said, no, they're not. So then Google set up and tested. And so what's happening is, as someone types something into Internet Explorer, so it's only with Internet Explorer, only with the Bing toolbar installed in Internet Explorer, and only with the capture data settings turned on. But basically, Bing's toolbar is watching people search stuff in Google, reporting that back to Bing, and then using that relevancy to populate Bing search results. How do they know? Because they took fake sites that don't have anything to do with anything on them and had Google people search for fake words, not even made up, completely garbage, gibberish words in Google, in IE, with the Bing toolbar turned on, and then had the results show these sites, which have nothing to do with these words. These words don't show up in the site. It's a total fake connection. But they faked it on Google's side, and then within 2 months, so basically saying there's no way naturally this would ever show up. Within 2 months or a month, they started to show up in Bing with those fake words, meaning they related to apple.com when there is no connection other than Google faking it and proving that Bing is basically watching users use Google and using those results to publish their own, to put into their own search index. This might seem like a big, much ado about nothing, this is pretty big. This is one company, a massive, huge company, stealing or scraping search results and algorithms from one person and using it in their own search. And I think this is the start of a pretty big search war that maybe people weren't paying attention to because Bing wasn't really making huge headway after their millions and millions of dollars worth of campaigns. Thoughts on it?
I think you summed it up. I mean, it's Google's business, right? I mean, well, their business is advertising, but its backbone is search, right? That's what they're known for, and that's what drives a lot of their advertising business is their search algorithms. So it is their thing, and to have their thing be stolen by someone else and be used by someone else to take a chunk of business away from them, because Bing is creeping up in the actual usage rates of search across the internet. I mean, this is a big deal for Google. So they ran this experiment. They proved it. I mean, Microsoft can't really come back and say no, we don't. I mean, they did, but I mean, it's sort of irrefutable. I mean, how does a search engine pick up a site that has nothing to do with the search term that you're using without, Google fudged it.
Right.
It wouldn't have picked up those sites. I mean, there's no algorithm that would have done that other than Google fudging it and then you grabbing that data and using it for yourself. So we'll see how it shakes out. I'm sure that there'll be some lawsuit stuff and some, this is our proprietary stuff, and here's some lawyers getting together.
It's not stealing from Bing. It's not stealing from Google directly. That they didn't break into the service, because what they're doing is watching users, and users have agreed to the terms and services, although they never read them. But I'm sure the Bing toolbar terms and services are, we will watch everything you do, and we can do anything we want with that data. And so I don't think there's anything that Google can do about it, but I think it's more of a political, a press thing to say, listen, these guys are literally stealing directly from us by watching people do stuff, and that's why they're not a good search engine, and that's why you shouldn't use it. I don't think this will go legal because they're watching end users who have agreed to the agreement, right? So the end user would have to do the lawsuit. Interesting news. Again, made it to comedy shows, which that's pretty. When search results make it.
When you make it to the fake news shows,
that means you're real.
That means you are real.
Real news on fake news shows. Speaking of real things that are fake, so fake, let's do our CloudFocus app pick of the week.
Let's do it.
So we'll start off with you.
We always start with me, and I'm going back to old reliable. Force.com Labs. Love these guys.
I would normally blame you for doing this while we're doing the podcast, but you actually wrote this yesterday, so I can't even say that you just came up with this last minute.
Nope, because Force.com Labs had their monthly or quarterly webinar update this past week. I think the video's up somewhere. You could probably find it on the developer.force.com likely. Or on appexchange.com. And one of the apps that they showed was an old app that has been refreshed a little bit called lead scoring. And I think lead scoring is a great idea. It's essentially the ability for a marketer or a salesperson to themselves put different weights or weightings on certain fields within a lead or a campaign member. So if a lead is part of a campaign and their campaign member record has certain attributes to it, it can add points which show up on a field within the lead called lead score. So a good example is if on your lead the title field includes CEO, then let's give that 10 points. Or if their location is in New York City, then let's give that 5 points. And then you have sort of a bar, right? You say, all right, I'm scoring these leads now based on data attributes that are within the system already, and I'm going to focus my time on leads where the score is above 7 for today. So it's a pretty good app, easy to set up, easy for end users to use. It's like a regular Salesforce page where they choose a field, choose the, equals or contains or excludes or whatever, and then a value, and then a point score for that value, and it automatically sort of runs in the background and scores the lead. It's pretty neat.
Cool. I was just looking at how many times you've picked Force.com Labs.
Lots.
This is the 4th time.
That's it?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, super follow buttons, survey force, and private messages. Maybe there's others that I didn't mark as labs. Good one. And
this one free as always.
Yep.
This one's probably, of those 4, this is probably the second best one.
So I would, the one thing I want to talk about this a little bit, because we've had some experience with Force.com Labs, in that one of the issues has been that they put out these things, but they might not be fully code covered.
This is true.
So maybe you want to talk about that a little bit.
Sometimes with the Force.com Labs apps, there are a few things where they're old, like from 2007 or 2008, and they don't get fully updated, and you have some code coverage issues when you try and move, when you install it into a production environment, and then you want to move something else into that production environment, it craps out on you, and you have to fix the code. They also have been putting out apps recently, action plans, milestones, PM, as 2 examples that require chatter to be turned on, because there's code in some of their triggers that writes to chatter objects, and it's, if you don't want chatter on but you want to use these great apps, you can't.
Interesting side note, we're playing around with the idea of launching as an app in the App Exchange, a little functionality that's not built into Salesforce. More to come later, hopefully, if we decide to.
That'll be my CloudFocus app pick of the week.
But it will be both of ours. But it does talk to chatter, so interesting, we have to take a note that do we want to put in extra code that can avoid chatter if we don't want it to. So, but I think it's just an interesting point to put out when we talk about all these Force.com Lab things, is that you won't even know it from installing it. So for the lay person or the person who's just a Salesforce person and throws things in their environment, this isn't going to stop you from installing it. What this is going to stop you from doing is you install this app, you have it up there for 6 months, you play with it, it's great, everybody's using it, but then you go write some custom code that you want to push into that environment from development. It's basically what happens is Salesforce looks across all your code base and makes sure that your entire code base has a certain level of test coverage. And so you could have figured out and written new coverage for that new code you're pushing in, but if these apps don't have enough coverage, they basically lower your overall test coverage number. This is, again, a little geeky, but it's a real pain in the tuchus, because you then
tuchus, is that a technical term?
Yes. There's tuchus and tukai. And tukini.
Tukini.
Yeah, so I just, it's one of those things I love. For all you Force.com Lab people, if you're in the lab with the lab coats on, could you cover your code a little bit better? How about 75%? Thanks a lot. And moving on. So mine actually comes from a piece of news that we dropped from our podcast, because it was going to be a long one, and so we dropped off a couple things. News about LinkedIn. LinkedIn is 2 things. They're going to go IPO, great, and actually 3 things. They're going to go IPO. They bought a company that does card scanning, interesting, an iPhone app company, and then they also released a new sort of save search feature, which you can search through all updates in Twitter and save them in your LinkedIn profile, so you can go back and kind of go, what are all the people in my network talking about certain terminology, and then search on those and have the save search, which is nice. That's better than Twitter, is that since LinkedIn knows the person, right? So Twitter, I could be blah20 at twitter.com or twitter.com/blah20, but since I'm linked into my LinkedIn profile, you can see that I'm Jason Atwood at Arkus. So it's kind of a nice, I think it enhances Twitter, because it gives you more who they are, where they're working, you can connect into that. Anyway, they launched that I think a couple days as well. So my pick,
wait, so you're making 2 picks?
No, so my pick is, because that's just a feature. I'm just talking about all this new stuff out for LinkedIn. My pick of the week is called Polaris Insights, which is a Google Chrome extension, free.
You showed me this.
Yeah, so it's kind of nice because basically it does a federated search across LinkedIn, Crunchbase, Crunchgear, what is it?
Crunchbase.
Let me just click on it to make sure.
From the folks at TechCrunch.
Crunchbase, LinkedIn, and Quora, which is basically a new version of Wikipedia. So they've kind of decided they're going to do a competitor to Wikipedia.
Like Google Knoll?
Yeah, but probably more popular. So what's nice about it is you can be on, it's basically an extension. You're on a website like apple.com or Arkus Inc. or I don't know where, google.com, and you click on this extension and it pops open a window that shows you Crunchbase information, LinkedIn information, and Quora information all in one view, so you don't have to sort of go to all the... It's nice. So it kind of gives you all the information they can find from those different, when they're founded, their home pages, their investments, their connections, and then all the sort of the products they offer, all the different things they have in Quora. So nice little app, Polaris Insights, free. We'll link it to it in the show notes. And use it in Google Chrome. Not available for anybody else. Not available for Safari or Firefox yet. So that's it for the podcast this week. As always, go to blog.arkusinc.com. We actually added a new button or a new panel in the upper right-hand corner for you to subscribe to the podcast. Right there, just click on that. You can follow us at twitter.com/ArkusInc for the company, twitter.com/JasonMAtwood for me, and twitter.com/JustEdelstein for Justin here. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/ArkusInc, and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. Win a prize of nothing except for our respect forever from both of us. And until next time, the next podcast, which will be next week, enjoy those cloudy days.